This is part of my promise to increase opportunities for quality engagement and feedback. I did do one of these in CRCBIA a few months ago, and plan to continue these types of events in the future. The reason Carp came second is because it is the second most populated village. So that's how I decided which village to do first. I also just wanted to provide an opportunity to come and ask me and city staff questions, provide feedback directly, and connect with your neighbors and community members, and hopefully provoke some more discussions, not just with me and city staff, but amongst yourselves on what you would like to see in the village, how you would like to see it done, when you would like to see it happen, and I'd love to see you guys talking amongst each other about the village and its people. Another reason why we're here is, let's be honest, Carp is an extremely important part of our ward. It is the second most populated village in West Carleton, a hub for amazing events. Many of our businesses from West Carleton are right here in the Village of Carp. And I often describe Carp as downtown West Carleton. It has a very special place in many residents' hearts across the divide, not just the people who live in the village, and I am one of those people. During high school, I think I spent almost every weekend on Kavanaugh. I had a lot of friends in Carp growing up. Some of their parents are here tonight. It is home of the best little fair in Canada, the Farmers Market, the Deacon Bunker, the Cenotaph, the Canadian flags on the poles down Carp Road, the historic building on the fairgrounds. This is a community with an amazing rich history and character, and there's an immense amount of pride in that we all feel. And that leads me to my last point, and arguably the most important one for why we are here, at least for me, and also indicated by the 65.73% of people concerned with balancing growth and development, with protecting the village charm and character. And because whether some of us may like this and some of us may not, we are part of the city of Ottawa. It is changing, and as a result, rural villages will be changing along with us. Now, I'd like to dispel some misinformation that people were discussing when the survey first came out. This was information that had originally been pulled from an Ottawa Public Library study and had been published in the Ottawa Citizen Army. That study covered the entire catchment area of the Carp Library, not the actual village population. So geographically, that stretched from Kinburn Side Road all the way to the 417 Highway 7 junction near William Mooney. So 18,000 people is meant to represent the number of people that the Carp Library may serve in 2040. What the actual picture looks like is this. The official plan projections indicate between 2026 and 2041, the entire city will increase population by 213,000. 5% of that is going to be in rural villages, meaning a growth of about 10,650 people spread across 26 rural villages. A more realistic number would be around 4,200. If there will be growth in villages of 10,650 people in the next 15 years, and that number were spread equally between the 5 rural wards, that would be 2,130 people per ward over the next 15 years. So add 2,130 to the 2,080 that are currently in the village, that gives you about 4,200. So not 18,000, everybody can relax, we're not turning this into Stittsville. And I also don't see why all of that growth must happen in the village of Carp. There is room for growth in some of our other smaller villages, and that's an idea I've explored with the new GM of Planning and Economic Development. All that to say that those who are concerned about that massive number can rest much easier knowing that won't be the case. But that does help me lead in to a little bit more on that last point and why we're here. So there's some major changes coming from the province and have already come over this term of council. So we've got updated population numbers from the province that are going to be coming soon. Urban and village boundary expansions are now ongoing. They are not comprehensive. They are not run by City of Ottawa staff. So what that means is that developers at any time can submit an application to expand the urban boundary or expand the village boundary. So that's a big change. That didn't happen in the past. This was a comprehensive process that took place citywide. They would analyze, population numbers, where there's room throughout the city, and make those calls in a comprehensive manner. But that's no longer the case. The Ontario Land Tribunal, and who can argue that has changed. Residents and community associations no longer have standing to appeal planning decisions. Only applicants in the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs now have standing. Water to the village. This is great. In the survey, many of you, a vast majority of you, thought that was a positive thing. And I think that in theory, it really is. We all want more quality water and a better source of water and a more constant source of water. But it does lead to the conditions that would lead to the type of intensification that many of you indicated in the survey that you were not all that excited about. So that's something to think about. Having this conversation, hearing directly from you and staff tonight will help shape my positions moving forward. What I fight for, what I fight against. My hope is that tonight helps me confidently represent the people of the Village of Carp when planning and infrastructure files rise or other files. The conversation tonight can go in any direction that you guys want. We are going to open this up to conversation and Q&A, and you will be in charge of what we discuss. So what I'm going to do very quickly, I hope it's quick, I'm going to start by addressing the top issues that were raised in the survey in the open comment section. So I read through it all, and I've highlighted the top issues that were raised on a consistent basis, and I'll just address those up front. And then I'll open it up for Q&A on that part, and then we'll go into some specific conversations about infrastructure and water, planning, and traffic calming, and those issues, because those were the top issues that were raised in the survey. Want me to do that? Okay, without a shadow of a doubt, the top issue raised in the open comment section was the clear desire for most people to see slow and responsible development, preservation of village character, and concern for what additional growth and intensification could do to the village. But we will deal with that extensively in a few moments. Same with water. So one of the top things that were discussed in the survey, both from a pro and con side, was the desire not to see transportation options in West Carp. So there is a significant portion of the population who do want to see them. But there are some things that we want to discuss as part of that. So currently, all of Ward 5 falls within what is referred to as Rural Transit Area B. So every house in West Carleton pays for paratransport, and that is it. For a home valued at about $700,000, this would be less than $100. It's $93.30 annually, to be specific. So if we were to ask OC Transpo to serve West Carleton, that would be a whole different story. So we would now be in Rural Transit Area A for full transit storage. So for the same level, so $700K home would contribute $1,561.69 for a difference of $1,100 roughly. So that's a lot of extra money on people's taxes. And I don't believe that the answer for Ottawa or this village is for OC Transpo to provide the service here. I believe the ideal solution is a private partner bringing transit solutions to the area. So I, along with a few of my rural colleagues, have been working with the Rural Transit Solutions Group, a private partner who owns a fleet of buses, who is reviewing solutions to provide a service in West Carleton for approximately $6 a ride per person. They're currently putting together the business case, and we will look into funding options that could potentially subsidize that service for the people of West Carleton. So for those of you who are concerned about what a transportation solution would mean on your taxes, not going to mean anything. For those of you who are looking for a solution for transportation in West Carleton, we are working on a plan and an option for you to serve. The intersection of Donald B. Monroe was something that was.
I have a question.
Sure.
Well, so you said that a similar priced house in Carp and Stittsville's taxes are $1,000 more?
Anyone who pays the full transit levy is paying. So right now, no one in Carp pays the transit levy. So yeah, that's what an additional levy that you would pay on your taxes if OC Transpo is to fully serve West Carleton.
I haven't seen that difference in taxes in the two in properties.
Well, if you own a property in Stittsville, and I don't know Stittsville like I know Ward 5, so there might be pockets of Stittsville where they don't pay the full transit area because maybe they're not served. I don't know. But what I know quite confidently is that the transit levy is a lot. It's over $1,000, and we don't pay it. We pay Rural Transit Area B, which is $93 annually for parents. So if there's some anomaly on your individual tax bills, we can't answer that today.
Are we paying other taxes that are way higher here?
No, well, your taxes are a percentage of the value of your home. So
Yeah.
if you have a valuable home, you're paying more in tax than your neighbor who might not. I'm gonna open it up for questions when I'm done, so I'd rather just get through this part, and then we can talk about all of the topics in the open comment section. So intersection of Donald B. Monroe and March Road, I hear a lot about that, have heard a lot about that over the course of the term. It has been identified as a dangerous intersection by the city of Ottawa. Staff are currently working on multiple options for that intersection. Over the coming months, we will see both myself and City of Ottawa staff come into the village for a consultation specifically on those options, but that intersection will be changing over the next few years and should be safer as a result. And again, there will be multiple options for community to provide feedback on before a decision is made. While we're talking about intersections, I might as well talk about Rivington and Carp. Safe to say that this particular area of Carp were be developed today, a road would not be put directly adjacent to a bridge. I have personally visited this intersection with traffic services, and I've had several of my good friends over the years live on Rivington, so this is something that I've experienced a number of times myself. I've raised this with the general manager of planning and the person in charge of traffic safety. The site has been reviewed according to the Ontario Traffic Manual recommendations for signage. As a result of that review, the transitional speed zone was added to slow cars down leading up to that intersection coming northbound on Carp Road. I actually just drove through it today, and the distance tab has been added to the hidden intersection sign. And more significantly, there is currently a visibility review underway. I look forward to getting the results of that back and seeing what the next steps could potentially be in making that intersection safer, but it does have the attention of myself and my office. Drove through it tonight, very strange, the bridge goes up really high, the road, Rivington is low, so I mean, it's clear that some change needs to be made at that intersection to make it safer, and I will continue to advocate for that. Fire in the Carp Hills. Unfortunately, our district chief, Bill Bell, is on call tonight and he's not able to be here. But anyone who's concerned about this, and I can't explain it in great detail, but I have had multiple meetings with residents of Carp, with the Friends of the Carp Hills. Bernard, I think you've been part of some of those conversations with Chief Bell. And I am, again, I'm not an expert on fire rescue or response, but I'm very confident in the fact that there is a plan, that they do have a plan on how they get into the Carp Hills, where their sources of water are, and how they're going to fight a fire in the Carp Hills should that ever happen. So anyone who would like to have more information on that can follow up with me after. I'll put you in touch with the right people to get that information. A grocery store. Probably the second most common comment in the survey, and of course, I think that would be a great idea. I agree that having resources like a grocery store, or at least a smaller store we can get our most of our essentials, is desirable and would make the community a better place. I'm not certain, however, based on all I've heard, that any part of Ward 5, including the Village of Carp, has the population to support a grocery store. Nor do I think, after seeing the survey results and comments, that most people here want to live in a village with the population density that would be required for a grocery store. And I'll go over the rural villages in Ottawa that have grocery stores. Manotick, Greeley, and Richmond. So the population of Manotick is 7,740, Greeley 7,470, and Richmond at 8,790. The current population of Carp is around or slightly less than a quarter of the population of those villages as of now too. So we can see that the villages that are attracting grocery stores are much more dense than Carp. And I'm not convinced that it will ever happen, even based on the updated projections for the Village of Carp, that might be tough. And I know that there are other parts of West Carleton who really want this as well, but I mean, if you live in Kinburn or Goleta, you're probably going to Arnprior. If you live in Dunrobin, you're probably going to Canada. Carp, you could go to Canada or Stevensville. So like I said, I certainly love the idea, and I know a lot of people want to see it, but I'm just not sure that it's going to be possible or it's ever going to happen. Lack of parking, couldn't agree more. I think at this point, it's more of a lack of parking for businesses congestion around Carp on a busy day, Donald P. Monroe in front of Skylar Cafe, Ridge Rock, Posh Pets, like that gets pretty tight. I drive through that very regularly, and I think it does make me think about what the future of the village looks like in terms of parking and availability to support those businesses. So I don't know what the solution is, that's the truth. I don't know what the solution would be. The city does own land in the village, and technically there's already a municipal parking lot here, but that's up by the library and the Diefenbacher, so not sure that really serves the businesses down at this end of things where it gets really busy. I have not ruled out asking staff to explore procuring property or properties in the village as close to the core as possible to support these businesses who need places for their customers. I will be happy to hear your thoughts on this when we do open it up.
What are the levels of ice, are they?
Didn't think we were gonna get out of time, but I'm talking about that. Shortage of park and green space, I also agree with that. And I know the emergence of Huntley Hollow reinvigorated that discussion on lack of green space in the village, or where we could have future green space in the village. We own about the city owns 34 hectares over by the Diefenbacher. So there are some challenges to creating park space out of that, but it's not impossible. So that could potentially be an option moving forward. Actually, and maybe I can discuss this a little more when he explores that map, but there is technically future green space or park space, I don't know if I've got that terminology right, Corey, actually at Dave's Autos. So I don't know if that's ever gonna get turned into green space or not. That might be a tough project, but could potentially be an option. I don't see Penny McNeely here, but if she is, okay, let's start Penny. The crosswalk with the Carp Common, so let's chat about that.
And we look at Mr. Senior's place, we've got 110 people in both of them.
Well, the city is installing a sidewalk for the people at the West Carlton.
Sidewalk.
No, I know that's not what you're looking for, but that is happening. So a study was done on this location, and I know this isn't what Penny wants to hear, but it does not meet the city of Ottawa warrants for a crosswalk at this location. The traffic volume, the minimum is 750 vehicles over an 8-hour period. That didn't happen. Pedestrian volume, minimum of 100 over 8-hour period. That didn't happen. Spacing adjacent to traffic control devices, it's 35 meters from a stop sign. The minimum is supposed to be 200. Speed limit's okay, so we did meet a couple of them, and then the thing that I'm always willing to push for projects that don't meet warrants, absolutely, especially when there's continuous requests from the community to do so. But earlier in the term, a motion was passed by council, and so there are 51 warranted pedestrian crossovers in the city of Ottawa that staff have not been able to get to. So this motion that was passed is to develop a plan and a timeline that includes the required additional funding for enhancement, or anyway, for 51 warranted PXOs by 2030. So because of this motion, there are 51 warranted pedestrian crossovers that must be installed before work on any unwarranted would take place. And so I think I can be quite honest in that simply is not going to happen. Certainly this term of council could potentially revisit the idea next term.
Well, it didn't happen, Clark, on the previous council either, you know?
No, I know.
But what's wrong with okay, let's go back to this all started. Nothing wrong with signage, nobody's asking for a flashing light. And your rule is there's a flashing light has to be at a stop sign. We should have carts there every week in this town, and we get a lot of stuff done. There's a crosswalk right here.
Not a bad idea.
Right here, sorry.
Maybe I'll get that redone when the car clears.
No, it's here, there's no stop sign here. So that rule of thumb.
No, it's just not, so it's an that is an intersection. So anyway, we can get into the details of it later, but it's not gonna happen this term of council. That is the reason.
No heat, no heat, nothing?
So, no, we can look at other enhancements in the area to make that area more safe for people crossing, but.
Well, I'll tell you something, you're gonna have a disaster, and the criminals will be pointed at you, because this has been going on for at least 6 years now. And that brought to
Appreciate your feedback on that, and I'll continue to try. The last one that came up in the open comment section was the burnt out house on Donald. not the first time I've dealt with a burnt out house. There was one in the village of Constance Bay that received a lot of complaints and took a long time to resolve. This is usually has to do with the insurance company and their investigation that's ongoing. It's not the city's willingness or ability to issue permits. So that process has to be thoroughly finished before we can issue permits. So that's probably holding the process up as an insurance issue with the owner of the building. So before we open it up to future development, village water and infrastructure, speeding and road pedestrian safety. Questions, comments about what we just heard?
I have one.
Yes.
The police department would require more people, we can bring it another several thousand. Because our safety will be impacted by that. I know we don't have a lot of problems in this area, but if you're bringing in thousands, you don't know who you're bringing in, okay? So I think the police department should be able to hire people for that. The fire department, East Stittsville is still volunteer, and these people come from anywhere around. They could be at work and get that, they've got to come home from work, they've got to come to the fire department, and then they got to go to the fire. You could be looking at 10, 15 minutes, whereas the other fire departments are there maybe 2 to 5 at the very least. Why do they not, if they want to bring all these people in and they want to grow and they want to get all the credit, why don't they start by filling the positions with permanent people that get better education? Because, and I know because I've had people go through both. If you're on the regular department, you get a lot more education on certain things than you do if you're on the volunteer department because of time restrictions. Why do they not develop? If they're going to up-develop their money, bringing in stuff, why don't they up-develop the things that may cost them a little bit for our city?
Well, I'll grab some of that. I don't know if Ian wants to talk about the police side of things. The Stittsville station is actually in the process of switching to a full-time station. So that process is under.
I know that.
I don't know exactly
there's
when that will be finished, but that is the
And I don't
process.
want ours to be one of the ones that forgotten.
Well,
If they can update that one, they can update this one. But they,
well, I mean, we live in rural Ottawa, where that is served by a rural
in City
fire.
Ottawa, we're paying Ottawa taxes, we do Ottawa everything. Our farmer's market went for a flip when Ottawa came in, because you had to have running water in each of your tents. Like, okay, that cost people money in that one. The city wanted things that were just not logical. And they ask for more and more, but they don't give back in the right places.
Not sure how to address all of that, but I can confirm for you, at least to the best of my knowledge. I've been to the Ottawa Fire Service Training Center. I interact with our rural fire service very regularly. I have the utmost confidence in their ability to respond to emergencies in our ward. And they actually do get the exact same level of training as the full-time firefighters.
So I want to give that, but then that's not,
They do.
usually pretty very.
And I'll pass it over to you.
I can speak, I can't really speak to the fire situation, but in terms of police, I can tell you Chief Stubbs would send 250 people to Elmer, Ontario to train every year if we could or more. But we're limited in the number of positions we can send down there. We used to put through 3 classes a year, but sometimes just budget-wise, we would have no one to send. I can tell you the new chief, the new executive, are stopping a stabilization plan. We're sending anywhere from 30 to up to 50 new recruits to Elmer, and the classes have gone from 3 up to 5 a year. There's a new facility in Cornwall that they're sort of testing out, the old Canada complex. There's a few issues there, but they did send, there's a class there right now. So budget and positions at Elmer is what kind of handcuffs us, but definitely we will staff the police service based on the population. So if the population in Carp or Rural West, we call it, goes up, then we'll staff accordingly on our platoons.
And that is paid for, so every new resident is a new property tax. and everybody pays a levy for Ottawa police services, so the funding comes with it.
The police are more organized, we're more unorganized. There's a better schedule, I've been through that too. And it's much more together than what fire.
Well, I mean,
Fire are just sort of, they're not even looked at.
I might say that, I keep calling him the new chief, but he's been here for 3 years now. Chief Stubbs has been out here a number of times since he started to tour West Carleton. A couple months ago, we stood in this parking lot with Peter Green, the president of the HCA, and talked about policing needs in the village. And the city, under Chief Stubbs' leadership, is changing how the Ottawa Police serves communities. So they're switching to what they call a district model, which is something that we had in place many years ago, I believe, and then transitioned away from it. And one of the examples that I use to describe the difference in those systems, the beginning of this term, when I first sat down with the deputy chief, he was explaining to me how speeding enforcement works in the city. All of it came out of Leitrim. So each area had a specialty, and I use that as an example because speeding enforcement is something we hear a lot about in West Carleton. And so, of course, having your officers start their day in Leitrim and drive all the way out to West Carleton, by the time they get here, they've probably pulled 3 people over and their day's half done. So that isn't a model that serves rural Ottawa very well. And I'm hopeful that we switch to the district model where the local detachments, I believe, and perhaps I can speak more intelligently to this, will have those resources available locally and could be deployed quicker and easier.
Yeah, the microphone was the one last time. So, we are moving towards a district model, and I mean, like, it can get pretty technical, but basically think of West Division, where I work right now, as its own sort of self-contained police service. Central has its own issues, way different from the suburban and rural. East would be quite similar to us, and the new substation going in is going to have very similar to West as well, with some suburban and Barhaven and Finley Creek and that, and then down into the rural areas. So my section in the district model will have neighborhood resource teams, which are officers that wear uniforms, but they can also go plain clothes and do a little more than a uniform 911 patrol officer. We have community officers, like the officer that's here at the back, that do a ton of work behind the scenes, save a lot of work for frontline and for our neighborhood resource teams. There's youth officers that I'll have access to in my role. There's traffic officers, to the councillor's point, that will be deployed out of West, and they'll be considered district traffic. So I will be able to say there's a problem here, there's a problem there, this is where we need to go. It's evidence-based, it's not just what I say. There's dedicated detectives as well in West Division, and each of the divisions have these. I think just through budget cuts and indeed, hindsight's always 20/20, but we had to centralize many of the resources. And so you have one person, let's say, working out of Central, out of Elgin Street, that's at my level, that's got control of all traffic all over the city. So they don't have that geographic ownership, like the councillor and I and his staff talk fairly regularly. I have 7 councillors out here in West, and I know all of their staff, and they can email or call me directly with issues. And then I can put that through with our with research analysts and environmental analysts, and they can take a look at it. We also have our community relationship specialist here at the back to sort of build that community side as well. But yeah, so we're all working together, and that's what the district model is. We had it up until about 2017, and then we kind of went to that centralized model, heard from the community, realized it wasn't working as well, and now the new chief and new executive are implementing this district model. It should be, the go live date is, I think it's January 11th, 2027. So I'm sort of in the pilot right now. They put us in, they're bringing traffic over, we got the NRTs and the community officers. So it's a slow progression, but another year or so and we'll be fully grown.
And then last comment on that, unless you have more questions, because I've heard you loud and clearly on the fire side. We are supported. So full-time fire does come to calls in West Carleton. So the first response in West Carleton is likely to be your volunteer firefighters. But we do have Station 45 right at the urban boundary that can be here in minutes and do support our rural firefighters. And again, I want to make sure everyone in this room knows that I think our rural firefighters do an amazing job.
Right, they do fine.
And, yeah.
They do fine.
Well, and to be, we
They're
did,
good, they are good.
we did make some changes this term, at the Emergency and Protective Services Committee, which I am on, and I supported these changes, which was to make our rural fire, so they are employees of the city now. They get benefits, they get vacation time, they get access to the job postings of the city. Well, many of them end up being covering, full-time firefighters, so, well, we can continue that conversation offline, but I appreciate your input.
Quick point about, the fire station down here. A few years ago, we had an ambulance like all the time, and response times were, of course, excellent, because here, when the ambulance was called away. We lost that because, I can't remember whether it was, they bought new ambulances that were too big for the fire hall. I think that's why we got it. Told the ambulance to sit second line, six line, because they couldn't get anywhere anyway. I think the response time from years ago when the fire, was canceled, and we were far higher than we before. We couldn't get the action, so it's that.
Well, I can comment on that, so, ambulance response times was one of the top 3 reasons that I put my name on the ballot. I don't know if any of you have heard me speak publicly, but my family has a very personal experience with level 0, which means there are no ambulances available in the city of Bolivar. The day my mom died, my dad called 911, level 0. So that was the day my family learned about what that was. And that was one of the reasons I put my name on the ballot. One of the things I focused on since becoming councillor, and so something I'm proud of is the fact that for 10 or 12 years, maybe even more, rural response times were not reported at all. We don't even know what they are. I moved a motion last year to bring that back, and response times from rural areas are now reported on publicly. They are atrocious, but they are heading in the right direction. We've hired 46 new paramedic staff over the last 2 years. And anecdotally, what I can tell you is that the building where my office is, there is almost always a paramedic and an ambulance at that building. So I'm happy with the progress, or I'm happy that we've made progress. Obviously, there's a lot more room to make more progress on response times, but I also haven't got a call or any response times in probably a year. So I think it's an issue, but we are heading in the right direction. Another thing I did a couple months ago, which received the full support of council, was a motion to ask the province for another nurse. And I might not have the terminology, but the delays with ambulances are on offload. So the paramedic, up until very recently, had to stay with that patient until they could be admitted to the hospital or taken into care by medical staff at the hospital. And so they've definitely reduced the offload times, which has had a positive result from response. Maybe?
The intersection of Mountain and Carp. Now from the California, I think that might be from 6 millimeters of paper.
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
Donald Dean Carp.
Yeah, from Carp.
How would that become a 6?
Well,
quarters.
Sorry?
Yeah, up to the problem.
Oh, I see. The corners, okay.
The angles are already kind of awkward, so it's kind of.
I was thinking
out who comes where, it's not a standard, but now, coming into.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Most of my shops, and then talking Hollow, it's gonna be like 6 ways.
So there isn't going to be a road.
There's no road?
No, there's sort of that, so what throws people off is on the map, it shows a city water road allowance.
It's like from the 1860s.
Yeah, what's going in there is a footpath. So I freaked out when I saw that too. Like, how are we gonna add another entrance to this intersection? But fear not, it will just be people walking. Yes.
I'd like some information about the bank closure. We weren't given any kind of background as to why they felt with the rapid growth of Carp, that there was no longer a need for a bank.
I don't have any insight on why Scotiabank decided to close that. I think we did hear from someone at the bank, but it was more just to let us know that they were gonna close it. They didn't give us any advance notice or ask us if that was okay or anything, so I think that's gonna be a question for Scotiabank on why they would close a bank in a growing community. My sense is that they don't feel the business case was there to have a bank in Carp, but I couldn't confirm.
And is that not a concern for the community?
I think it is a concern for some members of the community.
So what, as a community, can we do to at least find out what the rationale is and what they plan to do with the building?
I would say contact Scotiabank. I could reach out to them too and see if there's an opportunity for a wholesome answer that I can provide to the community, but I don't know whether or not they'll get back to me or not. And I think, I know people are disappointed about the bank. I am as well, and I'm hoping that at the very least, they'll keep a Scotiabank ATM in the village. But I will say that, Kinburn lost its bank, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, and a business has finally moved in and created an amazing place for this community to go.
Doesn't Kinburn have an RBC bank?
No, I closed many years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago is when I was it's now a brewery that sells locally brewed beer and locally sourced meat. Yeah, Covered Bridge Brewery, and they have all kinds of awesome local events. They had a little farmers market there a few weeks ago, which was amazing. So, I understand people are disappointed that the bank's not there, but perhaps there'll be something really neat that rolls into that building, and then everyone will agree. We'll see if they'll do that. Yes.
Now, I live on Regent Street. Now, come down to Riverstone Street onto March Road there, and you want to go and show that you've got the bridge there. Is there anything you can change there at all?
Well, I did address that in my opening comments. Right now there's a visibility study underway at that location, so I'm hoping that what comes back from that are some additional options that we haven't thought of yet or haven't implemented. I think, at least from the perspective of the Ward 5 Councillor's Office, we've explored different options there, reducing the transitional speed or increasing that zone so people are moving slower, adding a speed board so they can know how fast they're going, or they know they're going over the speed limit. But as I also mentioned, the bridge is heightened, the road is low, cement wall there, it's very difficult. I've experienced it a number of times. So,
I guess you could put salt on it.
Well, I think that could be an option. I've floated that option to the community, and it got very bad responses. Maybe we could revisit that idea, but I don't know.
I think a three-way stop on Don will be going up to Robert G. A three-way stop there would help people getting across because there's no sidewalks there. Help everything. It would help slow down people.
I don't know if our traffic people want to address that now. They are going to do a presentation shortly, so we can revisit that in a few minutes if that's okay. Any more questions on the opening part before I turn it over to Sue Jones? Actually, no. Yes. He's about to do a presentation.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, he's gonna, or a talk. I keep calling it a presentation. Maybe I'm adding too many expectations here for Adam. I don't know. But if you would prefer, he could do his talk. Or might answer your question, or if not, we can explore it at that time.
All right.
All right. He promises he's gonna be brief. All right, so if there are no further questions about the issues I opened up with, I think I've been talking for a while now. I will pass it over to Adam.
Thank you, Councillor. So, I'm Don Brown, and I'm the manager of the development review group for the rural area. So our team looks after things such as zoning bylaw amendments, plans of subdivision, site plan control, which is a process for a larger type of setup before a building permit, those kinds of things. And our group exclusively deals with the rural area. So West Carleton Marsh, River Drop, Osgood, Orleans, Cumberland, that horseshoe around the urban boundary. So we're very familiar with the rural area. I live in this ward. Yes. Carp Road, that's right. So that's our team's role. And so, as I said, I didn't prepare a presentation, but just to speak for a few items here. So this is the map that I asked Corey to put up. Thank you, Corey. That's from the secondary plan, so that's somewhat of our Bible when it comes to planning philosophy for the Village of Carp. So those boundaries that are displayed on that map are the boundaries of the village as per our official plan. So we have 26 villages in West Carleton, in the city of Ottawa. In West Carleton, we have Fitzroy, Constance Bay, Carp, Dunrobin, Kinburn, Bolivar. Corby's not actually considered, it's a good one, but Corby's not considered a village it wasn't considered a village back in the West Carleton days, so it didn't carry over to village status into the city's location. So that's our guideline for development. When we get an application, there's a whole section of various rules and policies that surround development, but that's our boundary. So the councillor had a really good point in his intro when he talked about planning, that years ago, whether it was the urban boundary or a village boundary, they couldn't change what was called a comprehensive review, which was driven by council, a very extensive sort of top-down, if you will, planning process to determine where the city would grow. And there has been changes years ago, I think it was, plus or minus, where the province changed the rules of the game, so now people, developers can apply for individual boundary expansions, whether that's the urban boundary or a village boundary. We don't yet have a village boundary expansion application in the city, but we do have, the development community does have the ability to do it. So right now, this is our lines on the map that show where Carp can develop. If there was ever an application to change those lines on the map, it'd be a very public process. It's called an official plan amendment. It's the largest, if you will, application that we have in the planning department. And it would involve public consultation, it would involve public meeting at the CRCBIA, which your councillor is the vice chair of. It's a very public process, so the village, these are the rules of the game now. For those rules to change, it's a very public process. I just wanted to, you talked about that and wanted to be clear that that's the process for that. So councillor stole a couple of my notes. It's interesting, your numbers were exactly the same as mine, or he didn't even talk ahead of time, but the population, we have a research and projections group that estimated, when I called them recently, estimated population currently for the Village of Carp within those boundaries, 2,100 people right now, with projection, a formal projection they're actually working on. They're doing a growth study for the entirety of the city. That's Q1 to 2026. So you're going to do growth projections for the entire city, and then that's going to trickle down to the various sections of the city, including each village. So that will be the city setting the future guideline on how many people are going to be living in various areas of the city. And you spoke to the high level of where we think we're going to grow. So that's going to be further confirmed in further discussions. So ongoing applications that we have, I'm just checking notes here to see if I missed anything. So ongoing applications that we have in the village right now. So just directly adjacent to where we are now, the Langstaff residential subdivision. So they have what's called draft approval. They're going to be registered very shortly. So draft approval is a process where the rules of the game are set for how the subdivision is going to be built out. Those parameters, one of the significant controls within the Village of Carp is servicing. Okay, and I think soon you're going to speak a bit about servicing. So we obviously need to make sure that the servicing capacity is sufficient for that subdivision to be built there. So right now, there's a portion of the subdivision which has servicing. You see the houses, the townhouses being built right now. There's what we call a holding provision on the remainder of that subdivision, so that only the homes that have confirmed capacity when it comes to water and sewer are going to be able to be built until that capacity is proven up, whether it's through short-term or long-term expansion to the water and sewer systems. Okay, so we get that information from our colleagues in infrastructure and water services, and that informs our approval process. So Langstaff subdivision, or consult my very large cheat sheet here, their draft approved for 81 townhouses and approximately 128 apartment units. So they're building out the first phase, which is 70-some towns, and the apartments would be to come, as well as through what I mentioned, the proving up of the services when they are available. So that's an application that actually has that step of draft approval and is proceeding towards construction. There are a couple of other applications that we've received within the village. One is 232 Human Road, which are the lands across. They used to be owned by Mr. Rivington, now they're owned by Tiger. It's that blank yellow spot in the far east of the village, as you see on the map there. There's an active application for that. That yellow area within the key, well, if your eyes are really good, you'll see that's village residential. That application cannot get draft approval until the services are proven to be available. So they have an application in, but they won't be able to proceed until those services are available.
So, just a question on that. They'll have to do meetings and town meetings and everything before that will ever happen?
So what the plan of subdivision process, that's actually a good question, so thank you for that. The documents related to that application are available online on our website, which is ottawa.ca/dev-apps, so the election application. So all their proposals are available online. The plan of subdivision process is something in which we go through public consultation and we receive input, but there's no actual formal public meeting for a plan of subdivision. There is, however, a public meeting for the zoning bylaw amendment, which is required to allow the subdivision to proceed. So that goes to the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. People can come and speak to that. So that's sort of the subdivision application starts, and then we need to get zoning to enable it to proceed.
So I'm a neighbor to that, and when do I get to say, when do you fold blocks down the street?
You can do that right now. You can contribute, you can provide feedback right now.
And I'll give you the information.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, we can chat, for sure. So that's a great question, well, thank you for that. The development application site, so planning staff will be on there, they received their draft approval, their zoning is done, so they won't be on that website. But the Tigard subdivision on the former Rivington lands, it is on there. I just checked before I left, I'm sure, you know, I didn't lie. The second active application that we have are the Carson lands, sort of across from the Ridge Rock there, the other side of Carp Road and Hunttley Hall. So those are also lands there that are proposed for both residential and commercial type uses, and that is in the same situation, if you will, as the Rivington lands, and that there's not yet servicing capacity available, so they can't get to that draft approval stage. So I know that's it, from talking to Councillor, from talking to Corey, I know there's concerns about the servicing, but that is a fundamental point in our planning approvals process, that there needs to be services, or they don't get that draft approval stage until they can prove it up. The last one I just mentioned. So I guess listed on a really high level, and this is something that the councillor and I talked about. The rules of the game for planning, for land use planning, are set by the province. The province has the Planning Act and the Provincial Planning Statement, which are the two sort of foundational documents province-wide, which inform our decisions. At the municipal level, we have the official plan, which is our guideline on how Ottawa should be developed. And within that official plan, we have individual secondary plans for different areas of the city. Not every village has their own individual plan, but Carp does, due to its history and nature and size and so on. So that's kind of a hierarchy of documents that are official plan and our secondary plans must follow the guidelines of the province, the provincial planning statement and the planning application. So the city has some level of autonomy in decision making, but we do have to follow the provincial guidelines when making our decisions. Yes, sir. If I didn't want to meeting or no.
Oh, just a quick question about 232,
Yeah.
that one there, it's partly in the village boundary and partly out of the village boundary. Does the village boundary have to get changed to approve that?
So the developable land is completely within the village boundary. So where the development will be built out will be within that boundary, like that's,
Oh, it's not the whole parcel?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There is the parcel itself does extend back into the
Yeah.
environmental protected area, and that will remain as such. But there has been, well, Nick, I think you know the ground truthing, yeah. So Nick was actually involved in the ground truthing. He went for a walk and made sure that the line in development respects the environmental area.
Is there an acronym for that?
Oh, I'm sure. Yes.
Can you tell us what's in the tag proposal since we're all sitting here right now?
Sure, so I can tell you high level.
What's that?
I can tell you at a high level the units that
Sure,
are.
high level would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So they have proposed approximately 105 residential units in that. It'd be a mixture of singles and towns. I haven't looked at that one for a while because it's been on hold, but 105 units worth to go.
I guess my concern is, you've heard in the study that there's been a lot of people concerned about keeping our village as a village. I'm not a fan of that development back there. I think it changes the village. And if we put something else out there, it's gonna change the village. The property values will be affected by that because we have something special here, and we want to preserve it. So how do you address that for our community? Because that's what's important to us sitting around here. You saw it in the comments. How do you think putting all those developments over there and that development is gonna help us as residents of this area?
Well, as I mentioned, so these are plots of land that, according to the official plan in the city of Ottawa, are slated for development. And have been for years, so, and another thing that's important, so I agree with you, that is a concern of people in the village, it's a concern of mine, on what would happen to the village if all of these units are realized over the next decade or so. But the official plan is the official plan, and that is currently what's in force, so that's an uphill battle to change that. I've already had initial conversations with our new general manager of planning and economic development. Anyway, the GM of planning, and the potential to review the secondary plan for the Village of Carp. Now, I can't make promises that is going to happen, but I've already put it on her radar, and I think, interestingly, the people who responded to the survey, because this is something I wanted to understand, is the secondary plan, the vast majority of people who responded to the survey didn't know about its existence, didn't know that there were consultations, didn't provide input, and the reason they didn't is because they didn't know that that process was taking place. So I am likely to ask the GM, and that will not be just a conversation with her. I'm sure I'll have to convince my council colleagues that we should review the secondary plan for the Village of Carp. But that is a potential action out of tonight and out of the process with the survey. And I did also have a conversation with her about village character and how we protect that and what that looks like moving forward. And of course, this was a half-an-hour meeting I had with her on a multitude of issues. She's fairly new. It was the first time we sat down together outside of our meeting with the Carp Agricultural Hall previous to that. So, to be determined, I guess, but it is something that I'm going to be pursuing as your councillor, in terms of making those things more clear, having input from the residents of the village on the secondary plan, and hopefully we can strengthen that, and find the sweet spot in the village.
Yeah, it'd be nice if our voice was heard and there was somebody listening and doing something that reflects our concerns. In 2100, you're gonna double the size of this, of Carp in 10 years. I don't know how long it's taken Carp to get to 2,000 people, but I'm sure it's a lot longer than 10 years. Well, it's about that, right? Those are the numbers you were presenting, tell me.
No, yeah, it took a long time to get there.
Yeah, that's right. So suddenly, we're gonna go in 10 years, we're gonna double it. I have no idea how that development's even gonna, I mean, we're worried about Rivington getting onto that road. What's gonna happen when you develop that other side? And how that traffic flow is gonna work? It's gonna be insane.
It's already a difficult on a Saturday navigating there. So you've got me convinced.
You need to talk to anybody else?
These people are hearing you, you are being heard, and I will mention it. This is the same thing I did in Constance Bay, so we're gonna release a report from tonight. Could take us a few weeks to generate, get all the comments from the surveys, organized in particular ways, and so that we can really use that data. But we are gonna put out a report for the community to read, follow-up items, if there are follow-up items to undertake. So this is a long.
There is a way to develop that area that does match the flavor of this community, other than just pumping out 105 units with people living in it.
Yeah, so right now, like the things I discussed at the very beginning of the meeting, those are the challenges we're up against. So there's provincial policies and the Planning Act. And so when we want to change how a development happens or stop a development, and of course, to do that, I would need to know that the majority of residents, that's what they want, and that it makes sense. But I would also have to have planning rationale to do it. And currently, there isn't really a whole lot of planning rationale or anything in the Planning Act that allows us to go, I don't like what this is gonna do to the village, we need to say no. So I think there could potentially be, and again, I can't stand up here and promise you that X is going to happen, but I can promise you that I will explore it with the relevant staff and try and find, like I said, the sweet spot of the village where the growth is responsible and can be accommodated with the infrastructure that we have, and if it can't, what infrastructure will be coming to accommodate that growth. Perhaps that is a good segue to Sue Johns, who's. Okay, maybe it's not a good segue.
So I have two questions. The first one is with regard of future growth of the village. So the current plan on the board shows us that we have 3 zones, zone 1, 2, and 3. And I can see that there's some of those zones are empty right now, they have future growth. So can you tell me if all those future land that are associated with 1, 2, and 3 will meet the future growth of the village? Is that enough land in those pieces? Will that be enough to meet the future growth of the village?
That's a great question. So when I spoke to our colleagues in the policy department, who were going to review the growth projections citywide, and then they were going to drill down those projections to areas and then drill them down further into villages, that's exactly the step that they take. So they review the land, the developable land within the boundary of each village, and determine based on the growth that's going to be designated in the rural area, whether we have enough developable land to accommodate the projections. So there is this, a statistical analysis that's done, yes.
So, okay, so they've went through that exercise. So you can have a small piece of land and still put 500 people on it if you build highways. So some of the concern that people may have from a village perspective is that if the growth of the village, the future growth is larger than the potential available land within the boundary, is that now we're going to see 5, 6, 7-story building, to accommodate more parking. So that could be one of the reasons people will say the village you don't see too many high-rises in the building normally, especially in a rural city.
That's right.
Now, my second question comes back to that as well, in the sense that if you don't have enough land or within the village boundary for future growth, the village is surrounded by protected environmental land and farmland.
You are correct.
How strong is the city committed, how committed are they to protect farmland to remain farmland? And protected land, environmental land to stay environmental land?
So the first part of your question regarding height. So I mentioned this is the plan, this is
Yeah.
schedule two, volume 2. So there's a whole set of policies within the secondary plan which would prohibit anything higher than, I believe, is 4 stories.
It's three, I read the plan, I read
Perfect, so
it,
you know.
so it's 3. But that's, I know how politics and city works. It's a plan now, in 5 or 10 years, it might be not 3, it might be 5 or something.
And so that would go through what I described as an official plan process, a very public process that would take input. I'm sure your councillor would have some significant concerns with anything that could change in that regard. But that's right now how the rules are set, so that if somebody came in and said, oh, well, we're gonna propose to do a, 5-story apartment building, we would say, well, that doesn't fit with the secondary plan, we couldn't approve that. We would have to do an official plan amendment and take us, apply for that process.
Secondary plan has no, has no real meaning, but it is not.
That's a community design. A community design plan doesn't have status, which there is a community design plan for Carp from 2012.
Yes.
But a secondary plan was, so when we get into the weeds here, but in 2021, we adopted our new official plan. There was a decision made that a secondary plan, which does have jam. So,
Well, there's some important points to make with that. So the original design plan was done back in 2010.
yeah, that sounds about right.
Then, the community association, I went to behalf of the community association, I talked to the city manager about the secondary plan, because the design plan has no teeth. He advised waiting until the official plan process was finished. Then, do a public process, have input. So if you remember, around 2010, at the time people were thinking about what this village was gonna go like, that's before half the development, most of the developments taking place the last 10 years took place. People got together and donated over $200,000 to buy that whole area, developed on that map. And because it kind of trailed out and the councillor failed to provide enough information for people to get involved in fighting for it, and others sold away, and see what happened. What happened was it ended up getting sold to a developer. And when that process was going on during the pandemic, the secondary plan didn't exist when it started. When the initial plan came out for that developer, it said that it was completely aligned with the secondary plan. And I called the plan and I said, what secondary plan? She said, I have no idea. She said, there is no secondary plan. And I said, I don't know. So there was no public consultation on the development of that secondary plan, even though I was told by the city manager that we could expect there would be consultation, where we would have taken the intent of our design plan. I still wept under the plan, because what they had done is they had taken everything that was in there, like that 3-story height business, that was in the community design plan process, that was what we were thinking at the end, along the line, down to the river. It was lower, we could maybe get a 3-story seniors building down in there, that's what we were talking about, a 3-story building. We're talking about 3-story apartment building on top. We said, in the design plan, it says nothing higher than the top of the building with that sort of, right? So when they wanted to, the proponent of the seniors residence wanted to build a 7-story building, they allowed that because it wasn't higher than the spire.
So we need to go through a very public process of information.
Yeah, it was a public process, but we have to reflect the actual rule of the community was another issue. But the bottom line, we have a secondary plan that I guarantee you, your staff sit down, look at the materials that came out of the design, the village design process, not just the document itself. A bunch of lay people looked at it, it looked great, it looked like we've done exactly what we wanted to, which was to make sure that the future of the village would be the way that we wanted it to be. And Connie's family were involved, with everything involved, with other developers, things, and this wasn't just a future, design in my backyard. So now you have this secondary plan that does not reflect the intent of that little design plan. The bulk of it is already destroyed by that development in the center of the village. And that's where we are. So it wasn't even, so, the thing too is that the public meeting, because you mentioned, you say quite correctly, there are public consultations. The consultation for that development, and I've been in many others for other developments, there was one Zoom call in the height of the pandemic, when I got asked one question, and then there were other people asked questions. The proponents, the proponents, was the welcome consultant, virtually ran the public meeting, the so-called public meeting, and that was the end of it. That was our input. So this is where we are, and this village deserves to have this entire issue re-examined, that intent goes design plan, and salvage what we can of this, and get it into the official plan, so it does have some teeth, because all these other things are in progress. You put a water pipe up Carp Road, they know perfectly well, what they're doing in other municipalities is that they're ignoring NC designations. And Nick walks this, Nick knows what NC means to the boundary, and he knows pretty well that a lot of places it's not being trampled, and those will mean nothing. So they bring that pipe up, they'll be able to do what they want to do that. There's high chance of the risk of blast it down flat, or they do it all, they'll just say, houses, right, to your point, you don't do that.
Well, the concern is.
Let's let it matter. So I guess with respect to the secondary plan, was it to your point about secondary plan being adopted as part of the official plan in November of 2021 without a popping of the hood of this Carp community design plan? I wouldn't disagree. The community design plan is essentially replicated as best staff could do with the secondary plan. I believe the councillor mentioned that he's going to be pushing for those secondary plans to be reviewed. You mentioned that in your field, right? So that will be an opportunity for the community to provide it. To the gentleman's question about the boundaries of Carp, you're quite correct in that Carp is a constrained village, I would suggest, in that surrounded by either ag land or, as Alan was talking about, Nancy, environmental type land. The expansion of any, so I'm getting into the weeds here, so I apologize, but the urban boundary in urban Ottawa and the villages within rural Ottawa are considered settlement areas as per the provincial planning statement, and the expansion of that settlement area, whether it's a village or it's an urban boundary, there's a hierarchy of what we look at. And certainly ag land is not something we want to extend on. Environmental land is not something we want to expand on. And if we're looking at the rural area for the expansion of villages, we look at all the villages, all 26 villages across the city to accommodate that growth. We don't necessarily, it's a holistic type process, I guess I'm going to say. So if Carp is constrained, well, then we might look at another village that doesn't have similar constraints when it comes to expanding that, such as ag.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, you gave the council mentioned as well, Ontario's changed the rules.
They have.
And so developers can go and ask for that boundary to be changed.
That's correct.
And so there's nothing that prevents a developer to go say, I'm gonna buy this big piece of land here, and ask the boundary to be changed to include that farmland into the city, point two, and then build.
They can certainly apply.
Yeah.
And it would be reevaluated through the policies of the official plan that we have, which have been further strengthened, actually, I guess, when it comes to ag.
Well, and I know that right now there's actually a developer trying to bring ag land into the urban boundary. I believe it falls in Port Phillip, right next to Arcadia.
Yes.
The city said no. City's not going to allow it. Yeah, so they take it seriously, and I can tell you as councillor that that's another reason I put my name on the ballot is the loss of farmland in Ontario is absolutely staggering. Nobody believes the stat, but it's like 219 acres every single day we lose in Ontario, and I don't want a single inch of that to come from this council.
And so to be clear to your point, which is a good one, the province has changed the rules of the game from the Planning Act perspective, so they can't apply, but that's what they do, is they can apply. So they file their application, the people on my team would evaluate and make a determination of what our thoughts are, whether that's a reasonable boundary expansion or not, whether it's a village or the urban area. We make a recommendation to the folks on the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee or Planning Committee, depending on the situation. And then they would make a recommendation based on what staff tells them, and then City Council makes the call on that application. But to be clear, the developers have the right to appeal that to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And when it goes to the Ontario Land Tribunal, We stayed our case, they stayed ours, and the provincial tribunal makes it all. And we win some and we lose. Right? Yes.
Just that, I want to take you all back to the nineties when water was brought in here. There was 670 hookups allowed, and it was compulsory, we had to join the BIA and do the perimeters, like I'm saying. It went from Deca to, Burlington Street, I forget, up around, I think the library, it was kind of a circle around the town, we had 32 businesses in it. Now, if 670 were allowed then, what I'm hearing is the Langstaff development, we've reached kind of maximum. Is that right, in 27 years?
So we've reached
The
a partial phase.
Number of hookups were 670 allowed when we got water and sewer
So what?
from the province. They all, okay?
They had 37 more. I thought that was all it was supposed to be after all
That's
the
what I'm
hookups
saying.
went.
So back in the day,
No, 670 were allowed after our hookups.
so back in the day, it set a number.
They set a number.
Yeah, now our,
Because the infrastructure is
Yeah.
only good for that amount,
Yeah.
without city law was spending millions.
yeah,
So where are we now, is my
So-
question.
it would be done based on, and my colleagues in the infrastructure and water services group, they would do real world analysis, okay? It wouldn't be a number that was set in the past, it would be a real world analysis between the water people use per unit and how much capacity we have in the system, so how much is remaining.
Is there-
Yeah,
Well, that's my question, is for, like, for Langstaff development.
Yeah,
you
so-
just said there's 110.
so there's like total, cheat sheet here, 81 semis and 128 apartment units is the total building.
Right.
And right now, from my recollection, there's 73 towns which are allowed to proceed now, okay, based on the capacity that's available. And the rest have what we call a holding provision in the zoning, so they can't pull a building permit until that holding provision is lifted. And we won't lift that holding provision until it's demonstrated that there's capacity in the system to provide water, sewer, sanitary bills.
And we tend to, because they added on some, what was supposed to be a few houses over the airport, which turned into a fairly, like a growing development.
Yeah.
That's not on the water as well.
That's correct. So the air,
So what's the status there?
so it's a good question now. So the airport is not on this map. As Lisa, the airport is a different area, like it's not within the secondary plan for the village. You are correct that the airport does use city law water, and it's a pretty unique situation. Pardon?
They call those people out of the water.
It's drawn from this municipal well within the village of Carp. That's correct.
They're drawing, but you hear them?
That's correct. That is correct. So, from my non-engineer knowledge of it, there's a demarcation point. The water goes down Carp Road, and there's a point after which there's some sort of meter, and the water goes to the airport. It's rechlorinated and so on, and distributed within the airport residential lines, and they have a set number of liters a day. So yes, that's calculated into the capacity numbers for what's left over, if you will, for the village. What's available for the village and what's available for the airport. It's a good point.
Drawn overnight as well, right?
Yeah, it goes to some sort of tank that gets rechlorinated. Yeah.
So if that hadn't happened, then there would all of this stuff would have been all finished and done.
Well, maybe not finished and done, but there wouldn't be capacity for it to proceed probably, yeah. Yeah, so there was commitments made to that airport development back in 2005, the council.
Really?
It didn't get started building until way after that, but really the council decision was in 2005.
And just said, yeah, you can take that ball and throw it.
Correct, and they have their own sewage system, they don't use the city's sewage system at all, they have their own proprietary sewage system at the airport. That's a good point as well.
So you mentioned that because the cargo corridor doesn't have secondary. It has a built design plan.
That's right.
Which limits development by the last longer than half of our schools turning agricultural net by the work design plan. But that is a little different than that on the fashion plan. So teeth in them. So once that gets turned into sanctuary farm as well. And some fathers say it was back then, once the pipe comes up part of the village, all these restrictions are going to disappear. And it becomes possible that, just like they did in one of the regions or any place, like that, once they get the pipe, it's so much easier to justify the older permission or asking for permission to get in the hill. They get it, the water's like, right? They get over the water source. That's why it's critically important. We get this documentation sort of like as much as possible, get to go over the view of that secondary plan. And we want our goal because it impacts us. Please.
So basically, I'd like to achieve two.
My name is Sue Johns. I'm here representing the Infrastructure and Water Services Department. I'm just going to tell you a bit about that, because it has water underneath, and we have 4 different groups that do all different things with water. And so our first group actually treats water. So we have the operating group who run the water purification plants at Britannia and at the Muir. And we also have a team that operates the sewage treatment plant there at Bolivar. So they're on the operations group on the facility side. We have another operations group that really looks after all the pipes. We have drinking water, it needs to get to the customers, and so there's pipes in the system of network all the way through. They also do the wastewater collection through pipes. They're an operating group, they work together to collect and distribute different kinds of water. The next group is the group that I work with, it's called Asset Management, and we're responsible for all the infrastructure that the city owns. So we have an inventory of all the roads, the sidewalks, the bridges, the buildings, the parks, and everything the city owns, not land. That's a different group. And that involves, this time of year, what it involves is looking through all the inventories of everything the city owns and understanding the condition and the needs and how well are the things that the city owns providing the service that they're supposed to provide, and making recommendations to council for investments. So we do a lot of work that feeds into the budget at this time of year that says, here's our greatest needs, here's the things that we recommend that you should invest in. And our 4th group is called Infrastructure Services. They'll take the list of projects that Asset Management has identified and the money that council has approved, and they turn it into projects, design and construction. So they're the folks that actually deliver the work that those other teams identify to make sure that we're meeting the expectations of the community. So I'm going to just start with a couple of things. Carp Communal Well System, we talked a lot about drinking water. I got the annual report of the communal well system that shows that it continues to deliver safe, reliable drinking water to everyone that it serves. It's meeting all Ontario drinking water standards. There's a very awesome companion report to this. If you like chemicals, that's pages and pages of chemicals. This shows you all the criteria that they're required to meet, what the criteria is, and how well the water is performing, how well it's treated and delivered. And you know this, because you live here, there is naturally occurring hydrogen sulfide, and that water's a little bit hard comparing it to all of the standards. But your voices on the quality piece have been heard, and I know in 2024, there's a project with the name GAC that I have to look up, Granular Activated Carbon Project, that was completed to improve the aesthetic quality of that water. There's $5 million, and there are, not all villages have that. It was in response to feedback that we heard from the community and an attempt to make that better. So those reports the water quality reports are available online, and I'm happy to share those with you if you wish. And so we've also talked about the fact that well is serving the existing community, and it's being asked to serve future community, because Adam spoke about what's trying to connect. And you also heard that there's a couple of developments so far that have been told, no, you can't. And that underlines the technical work that happens when development applications are made, because part of our teams are always working very closely with Adam's team to make sure that all the rules are followed, but that also, especially on the servicing that you rely on every day, that it's without negative impact to you. And I certainly have heard that we need to have clean drinking water, we need to have reliable services, and know that the technical work that happens at a very detailed engineering level has that top of mind. So there are improvements. There is a project in the infrastructure services group that is underway to address the need for some upgrades at the communal well. The design is very well advanced. I think we're at 66% progress. So we should have the design completed next year. And you will get notification before any construction happens. My bet is that the construction is not going to be until 2027 to get going, but you'll hear more about that. Certainly your council receives a progress status update on that project every month. And so when things change or there's information, we're happy to always make sure that you have the best information about how that one is going. That project's going to provide us with updates to the well system, also to the wastewater. It's a double project. And it's going to give us sort of 5 to 10 years of life, depending on how things go, because yes, there is room for development here, but a lot of it is in the hands of landowners, and we need to get this done before the capacity can be met and these technical requirements as part of the Planning Act application. So that's sort of the short to medium term. Because of the longer term things that Adam's already talked about what else could happen, we did do a study, an engineering study about the ability for that communal well system to serve more people in the future. Can it? How much would it cost? What would that look like? What's the implications of that? And like engineers do, we like to have many options. And so one of the other options that was reviewed at that time was a connection of a pipe to the Britannia water purification plant. And those options were assessed, and the conclusion of that study was that connection of a pipe is worth studying some more. And so there is another environmental assessment that's going to kick off. It will do a deeper analysis. It will look at a broader list of criteria in terms of the pros and cons. And certainly a lot of the issues that you've already identified are the types of things that get careful examination through an environmental assessment, and it is a public process, to determine if official plan things were to change, what would that look like? So this is a very early study for us to do. It really is trying to have us prepared because it takes some time, and a little bit because of the uncertainty. So we want to have that. So that study is underway. If I play what if the pipe comes out as the preferred option? There is still more work that would need to be done, because any kind of environmental assessment, how I describe it, is it's a fat marker on a map, and you can't build fat marker type of thing. You need a lot more detail, and those are the additional steps that would be taken for whatever option comes in as preferred. So that takes us much farther and much more in line with the types of things that Adam is talking about. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. And I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah, that's right. That's right. The initial planning work for that was a series of permits and approvals. And the approval was at this level, and the way the capacity of the pumps were forming at was less than the cap. And so the upgrade is going to take us closer to that cap and maximize what we can get out of that existing station.
So you're trying to accommodate for whatever is planned to develop.
That's right.
One more quick question. In terms of wastewater, last year we had a severe storm here. For the first time,
Do you remember water from like a storm like that one?
so with so much water, it's difficult to slope and the drain has to go down. So much water being pressed down the line and the top end, it blew manhole covers off and the bottom flood homes and all that kind of stuff. Is there capacity for these plants to all do it? I guess we're gonna get this one.
Yeah, so I forgot that. That's my casual approach, was I wanted to mention that as part of the work that we do is stormwater drainage. And that storm August 9th and 10th, we were involved in that response with Public Works, and involved with the analysis of trying to figure out what happened. We had people attending all around the sites and taking a lot of photos, because one of the things with storm impacts is within a day or so, the water's all gone and you can't remember what happened, right? So we did have people collecting information to help us with the analysis. And you're right, we are seeing higher intensity and more frequent storms all across the city. The year before, almost in the same days, there was a big storm in Alta Vista. There was a couple of pockets of different wards that got hit, where saying you should be taking holidays that weekend. You don't want to be part of that storm response. But that is part of the analysis that we do to, yes, accommodate for development, but there's another change that's not development, but it is a change. Right? It's a change that we are seeing more often, and that our infrastructure is being asked to do different things that it was designed to do, and we try to figure out what we can do to maximize how it performs with minimum impact on people. The other thing is that in flood response, especially inside the city, where, and we have the same thing here in Carp, some of the homes are older and the standards are different. And so there is an education piece for us too, about what can you do on your own property? Can you make sure, you know, if you have a backwater valve, can you check on your sump pump, about ditch maintenance? There's a whole bunch of things that in the category of we can do as much as we can try and extract benefit from the infrastructure, but there's other things that everybody can do together, because it's a lot to contend with.
West Carlton disaster relief, and we work with the city of Huntley and couple of places to help to reduce these things.
Sure.
So, information, we give some information about what's going on. If it's not going to change, so the river, can't do anything with that. So, we have to do that. But,
We need that separation.
Yes.
Wouldn't the city be better off to bring their pipes instead of, you know, out here, and give the people in Carp water? There's a lot of people with their wells. In the dry weather, that wasn't fun. Okay? There's a lot of people that have very little water, like just across the Queensway. Very little, it's all wrong. Like we're on one of these volunteers. But the thing is, wouldn't they be better off helping the people that are already here rather than taking the little water we have? Why are you taking what we need? Why not put the pipes here? I mean, we're paying taxes like everybody else.
We're talking about.
Why are you putting pipes in to take our water to the city when we need the water right here?
That's not, no, that's water that's served you in the village comes from a well in the village.
Yes, but where's it going to go if you're going to hook up to our water?
It's not gonna go anywhere. It's gonna stay in Brent.
It's for Carp.
It's going to the airport.
It's coming from, if the communal well that we have in Carp right now,
It's got part of our, not all of it.
yes, that's
Just
right. The people who, yeah.
Pipes put them in here.
So, yeah,
That is what we're talking about. We're talking about hooking the village of Carp up to the central source of water for the city of Ottawa.
I think she's saying, why are you taking water to Carp to the airport?
yeah. So when the airport, that's you, when the airport was approved, that they got some capacity, and so it's still theirs. Right, even though they haven't used it all.
But why was it given when Carp didn't have the capacity to give them?
Yeah, I mean, it was a decision made 20 years ago.
No, it wasn't 20 years ago.
Well, I can show you the council report from 05. Like it did.
Airport?
It did.
Because I was the councillor here when we got the water here.
Oh, for sure, yeah, to the village, but if you're talking to the airport.
No, the airport came along and Huntley Wake and everything else, and they dropped the passage for putting residential there. Good God knows the guy had Florida. And, you know, instead of having their own system, they took Carp system, that the developers had to pay 10% of the total cost, and everybody that moved to Carp was paid $10,000 on the price of their building permit to be live in Carp for the water.
Yep.
And he came and took it.
But they pay it too.
Pardon?
They pay a levy too at the airport. The same
Do
levy.
they pay the $10,000 levy for the house up in the airport that the people in Carp have to pay?
They pay, they're covered under the same bylaws, as far as I know.
Well, we had to pay
Oh, yeah.
10,000.
Understood, yeah.
You had a lovely well running and everything was fine, and you give 10,000 dollars.
Yeah, and-
That's the law.
Back in the day.
But
yeah.
it's the same as if they're building here now, so the developer is being charged to put the same amount.
There's a levy, an extra levy for the permit.
But I don't think it's ever been a point, development part, that anybody likes to develop. People like living here, but they don't like the next person living here. You know, like it's going to become a ghetto of $1 million houses. And, you know,
I'll never forget the moment that I was canvassing in Hidden Lake and someone came to the door and said they do not want any more houses in Carp. But I clearly remember running around up there when there were absolutely no homes there. So but I also understand that side of things as
But
well.
what-
Nobody wants anyone.
but I had to go through the same thing. I developed Hidden Lakes. Everybody said, that's stupid. We bought it, figured it's going to be 2-acre lots, and then they said, the water's shitting in Carp, we're going to bring it in. So we had to sit there for 10, 15 years until the water came, and then the developers had to pay, not for their portion, but for the whole portion of the town, 10%. And then people come along and said, oh, Mr. Tiger, what are you doing here coming to town? Why would you come to town?
So definitely, like to your point, there is a special levy.
There is.
Yeah. Every permit that gets pulled, there's a special levy to pay for the water.
Yes.
Specifically, that is on the books.
Until the $2 million is paid off.
That I can't speak to, but I know
But
it's
it's a
on the
running
books.
thing, you can't get to it.
Yeah, I have a question, and I just want to confirm with you that the improvements to the well that are planned are meant to accommodate 232 Donald Bean Road and the Parson development? Or are those still going to be on hold unless there's some other water that becomes available? That's what I'm trying to understand.
So there'd be, as Sue,
Are those, I guess the question is, are those developments on hold permanently unless there is city water, municipal water brought in, or are they only on hold pending municipal well improvements?
that's an excellent question. So it'll be all based on flow available and demand. So if the improvements that Sue talked about that they're undertaking with the municipal well that exists today provides enough capacity to those developments to proceed, it would be allocated through the planning process. But if those improvements don't, for lack of a more elegant term, yield enough capacity, they would still be on hold pending the longer term plan, which would be the big budget.
2 meters at least.
But no, let me ask the question.
Oh, okay.
Because if indeed there is sufficient yield from the improvements to cover those two developments, there's very little left to develop within the village. So the only reason to bring the pipe out is if you're expanding the village boundary to do more development. Is that not true?
Well, I think it would be to, maybe address, well, that's a good question, I guess, to address
Because I think,
potential growth.
I think that pipe,
Yep.
bringing in, we talked about this for a long time, the implications to the park mills and to the area. Is if you bring in municipal water, it's treated externally, you're basically opening up areas around Carp for totally building. I mean, I think it makes it a whole lot harder to say no. If a developer buys part agricultural farmland and decides that they want to develop it. And so I just, what I'm trying to figure out is there a way to just, prevent that pipe from coming here? Such that we can retain the village character while still accommodating the art that is currently planned in the building. That's, the village is currently allocated within our village boundary.
I honestly don't know if the
I
math
don't
works on
understand
that.
right now.
Yeah.
No, I think that's what I'm trying to figure out.
So I think that's the crux of the issue,
Right.
as I see it, and the pipe isn't first. The planning decisions are first,
Right.
and then a pipe, and then those planning decisions, with, depending which way they go, they might need a pipe.
I don't live in the village, I live in greater metropolitan Carp, as I call it. So I live 2 kilometers beyond the village boundary, but my area would be one of the ones where it gets extended. Like, I can absolutely see that occurring, and it just will go right out north on Park Road. And so, and I worry, I have to say, I haven't did well, but I worry about, I don't even know what the impact is from the village drawing its water on whatever aquifer I happen to be in. Like, I don't know, I would connect it or even if they are connected. So, anyway, I just think that, like, I think you've heard it already, I just think that pipe, the potential for municipal water is a definite, and that's something I would put.
I might just start by reiterating the fact that I think it's important to mention, and I'm going to go to Sean next, and he mentioned this in a meeting a year and a half or 2 years ago when we talked about water. We are surrounded by significantly financing, so an area of natural and scientific interest in the Carp Hills and inland, as we know it. And I think there's precedent that we've seen very, very recently that the city says no, regardless of whether or not there's water. So I would see that as continuing. Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever seen Field of Dream? If you build it, they will come.
Still.
That's my answer.
And like Adam said, nothing would prevent someone from buying that land, letting it sit, and then 10 years later making the argument, hey, no one's farming it, why can't I hook it up to water and build 400 homes? But it's all hyperbolic until it actually happens, so I don't know how to address that in a different way than I already have. I'm gonna go to Sean next, and then we'll go to
Well, Clark, you basically echoed the comment I was gonna make, is the village of Carp is surrounded by EP3 land that will never be developed. It doesn't matter who we have in government. Ag farmland in Greater Ottawa, I haven't seen any examples of it being approved for zoning change, except for one which was around a high density or around a transit node. I think it's a bit of a irrational fear that we have that the village of Carp that we're gonna get decent water here for a change, and then all of a sudden we're gonna turn into Richmond or Stittsville. That's not gonna happen. We have the environmentally protected lands to the east. We have farmland to the south, we have farmland to the north, we have farmland to the west. And none of which, or very, very infrequently, gets developed within the city of Ottawa.
Well, they developed all their farmland.
But it wasn't zoned, it wasn't,
to be clear,
it wasn't class 1A.
Yeah, Richmond, the lines in the, it's actually the lines on that map were drawn in 1818 when the United Empire Loyalists, set out it's a true story. We have this, have an inquiry about it. So the village of Richmond, has Richmond expanded exponentially? No, no. Is the density in Richmond very, very high? 100%. Has the boundary of the village of Richmond expanded? It has not. So that was the lines of the map in the Richmond secondary plan getting filled in. Richmond is partially on the communal well system.
So is that?
Two, yeah.
Is that growth served by a communal well
This
system?
growth is served by a communal well, which the developers paid.
Behind you, Andy, is that gentleman.
To go back to the August 2024 street level flooding event, 14 months ago now. So my question would be, if, probably not yet, but when we get the next 150 millimeter rain storm, what have we done to mitigate the amount of damage that we experience in this neighborhoods around here? Since, like, have we put anything in place? Have we troubleshot, stormwater facilities might need to be upgraded? Or what area might need to be cleared of brush so that we don't have, the fields flooded, because the sewers aren't taking the load of water?
So that is something that IWS, the Infrastructure and Water Services, is involved with Public Works, because of the way the streets and stuff are set up. There's a couple of areas that I know that investigations are still ongoing in terms of the drainage work. So I'd be happy to tell you more specifics about it. I am not equipped tonight. I'd be happy to fill in on the council's report of what the actions and the outcomes were that we had on that event. We had roads washed away, culverts washed away, those are all reinstated, but you're talking about some of the lingering stuff and obviously I can hear that you've had some impact on your private property, which is always very difficult, and there's things that you can do, but I hear you saying, and city, what are you doing, because we don't want to have that happen again. So I'm happy to get back to you on that, because I do have a more detailed list from all the inquiries that we got from Councillor Kelly's office with the coordinated efforts between Public Works and IWS.
I'd be really confused.
Thank you for your question.
I may also just add on to that, drainage works can be incredibly complex. We've got the Drainage Act that needs to be adhered to, municipal drainage, ditches, so it all works in a network. And also, permits, like I would imagine that the city of Ottawa, in some of this work, would need to obtain permits from the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. It's in the Carp River watershed, so there's a lot of things to consider, and it is highly complex. It's more complex than any of us would want it to be, but I appreciate that Sue will be providing some further information on what it does.
I have an open ditch right in front of my house, there's a grate there. To take something, nobody ever cleaned it, nobody ever was there. It flooded when the big rain came, it flooded my basement. I couldn't get a hold of anybody, so I couldn't find it because they hadn't got any mark on the road. And I'd like to hear, and cars were going by and throwing water over my head. And when they redid the road, I told them all of the stuff was there, and I said, there's a puddle across the road, a big puddle every time it rains. Oh, they all fixed now. And I'm like, take a drive down the Beaver Drive, get your mail and see what happens. There's water out to the center line like that. You know, these people don't listen. They don't listen to you. They're just. I mean, it's open ditches. There's not many open ditches in any places anymore, but I have. Of which I've had every councillor from West Carlton, Carp, the whole bunch, right up through the Ottawa, and they wouldn't put a pipe in.
Well, and every single one of them couldn't do it. I'm going to go on a limb and say it's probably not going to happen, and there's probably very good reasons why it couldn't happen.
I want some clarification on what fees the aquifers that is developed on, not just the municipal ones, but the ones that residents rely on. From what I understand, a lot of people in Maritime Village, I'm not sure if that's a Bergen part.
It is not.
But the aquifers, rather, so I don't know how they're connected, but like, I've also heard that some of the aquifers here in Carp are replenished by the river as well, but I'm not very clear on that. So if we do expand capacity, for example, for the municipal well, are we guaranteed that we can have more water there, period? or we're just adding more pumps for water that isn't there. I don't know what the source is. Because we had that rain this year, exactly, and a lot of people ran out of water, not necessarily in the park,
A
but
lot of people did, and still are without water.
do we need rain? Or is it coming from the river?
Yes.
No, we need.
So there's a whole, it's called hydrogeology, so how water flows underground. And you probably know more about this than I do. A little bit.
I did have a rain line figured out. Oh, possible.
So it's all about, so could it be from the river? Yeah, so you think of the level of the water of the river, and depending on the permeability and the type of the rock and whether there's cracks, right? The river water can make its way underground. There's infiltration from rain. Rain is a big one. There's creeks and streams also that have that sort of wet area around them. So it is sort of that grade 5, you probably learned about the water table and all the things that happen, and there's the same kind of thing that happens underground, depending on the characteristics of the soil and the rocks and whether they're cracked, stuff like that.
I can't really add much to that, because I'm actually not that familiar myself with where Carp's well is or how deep it is. But it's very specific to the well. So up on the Carp Ridge, where it's hard bedrock, as Sue's described, if you've got a shallow well, it's infiltrating through cracks in that hard bedrock, and the carp fills all the wetlands up here hold a lot of water, so you're probably in good shape. Marathon Village, I suspect they're on shallow wells. And yeah, and you know, you can have a shallow well, which is a shallow aquifer, you can have a deep well, which is in deep aquifer. Deep aquifer is generally fine, and shallow one can run dry if there's not enough rainfall. And so that's about as much as I can contribute.
Because of the deep aquifer, the deep wells are dry. I mean, if we have another drought next year, for example, and next year, just thinking the worst case scenario.
Yeah, so we have, one of the pieces of data that we have about the communal well in Carp is that we do have a lot of instrumentation to be able to report what the water levels are, and it's in the low water area of the MVCA. The water level's a little bit down, but not enough to be of any concern. Our Ottawa River flows have not really been an issue in terms of intake into the plants. I do have people on my team who have been very involved in the low water. We've been involved in with Councillor Kelly's office and with other rural councils and the supports we can provide for the people who have been without water, because it's a very, like, you need water, right? It's been a huge impact to people financially and inconvenience-wise, and private wells are a responsibility of the homeowners, and so it is very difficult in a time of distress for us to be saying, well, the answer is you need a bigger well, or you need a deeper well, and you need a different kind of well, because that's fine. And they're already spending a lot of money for water. So one of the things, this hasn't happened in Ottawa before, for us to have this long a period of low water. We are still at level 3. The conservation authorities, they rotate, and we meet with them every week, one of them every week. And nobody is lifting based on the amount of rain that we've had. So we are very active still talking about this conversation because of winter coming. And will the groundwater restore in time for winter? We've been in touch with people in Nova Scotia because they've had a prolonged drought. And we are starting, because this is again like those big storm events, this is something we haven't had before. We're starting to talk amongst ourselves and saying, okay, well, what should we be doing? Because we have a map that shows all the aquifers across the city, and we have another map that shows where all the wells are, and we have some information about which ones are dug in deep or shallow and which ones are drilled in deeper. And so we've started to build, we have an example of a report from Quincy, where they experienced 2016, they had a level 3 for quite a long time. And so we've got their report to say we could do this type of analysis to better prepare ourselves and to better prepare residents. Questions like which aquifer is going to bounce back first if we get the same amount of rain. which areas are more likely to be at risk based on the data. But this is a new area for us, so those are terrific questions.
You were asked to reduce our water usage
Yes.
a whopping 50%. Is that correct? Is that a typo?
No,
50%.
yeah, I think the call was uniform across, and it's through the whole city because those conservation authorities cover all of Ottawa, and everybody who was on a well, was on level 3.
So if you look at the treatment center in Canyon Beach, wouldn't that mitigate the future risk? Or no?
If you are connected to the city's water system, you weren't affected by the low level.
So in the future, if we wanted to prevent these low level refineries, wouldn't it be better to build out that infrastructure now sooner rather than later? Because,
So there you've got one of the pros. And certainly, we've all heard pros and cons, and there's a lot of things to consider in that type of a decision. From a planning point of view, from a community point of view, that there's a benefit of having that pipe would be, we wouldn't be influenced by low water conditions for those that are connected to a well.
All right, I'm gonna go to Judy and then to the back, and Roddy, so, right? And then I'm gonna stop this conversation and move to traffic. If we need to come back to water after that, we absolutely can, but I don't want these gentlemen to come out here for no reason. So I'll go to Judy, and then we'll go to the gentleman in the back, and then we're gonna go to traffic.
Thank you. I just wanted to underline, I think the anxiety you're hearing, I think when we live through a severe change such as the drought we're still in the middle of. I also was disaster was probably last year weekend when you're still hearing people living by water since the first of September. So that's a very long time, you know, to go through the winter. Couple of questions. I looked up the Carp wells. They're not that deep. They're like 23 meters and 27 meters deep. That's not very deep. So I know we were reassured that there's no problem so far, but this is the worst drought we've had in no long. Looking ahead, if we link all our decisions that we're talking about, the planning decisions, so the flood preparation, the drought, preparedness, we really have to revise our understanding of what our capacity needs to be going forward. And I don't think we know. But we do know those 100-year storms are happening every 10 years now, maybe every 5 years. The severe weather we're experiencing, we really have no, so as we're making decisions like planning capacity, I believe the province allows every residential lot in the province can be divided into 3 triplex. So if each of those lovely homes on Glencastle, you know, you just look at Westford. You buy a couple of homes, you've got enough property there to put a 6-plex or 8-plex. Now you've got 8 times the demand on the water system, 8 times. That sort of thing. I'm just wondering, if we sure we're looking at all these decisions for planning commissions.
So just a few weeks ago, the Climate Ready Ottawa report was approved by council. And it prioritizes in a 5-year plan the things that council has directed staff to look at. It also itemizes how climate money is going to incrementally be added to budgets to work initiatives across the city. So infrastructure and water services, we have a list of things that we have in our plan, but they're now higher on our plan when we apply to climate plans. So that would probably be of interest to you. It's a 5-year plan and it will be updated because this is a new area and we want to make sure we're always spending money in the best place, incrementally. There is a lot of coordination with the climate team. It's really, I think, an effort that goes through the whole city rather than in a silo by themselves because like in a community center, if we have a boiler and we could do an electric heat pump, well, the heat pump costs a little bit more, and our replacement plan would be spent for a new boiler. But the climate people will say, well, I'll give you the extra money for the heat pump, make it a heat pump. So that we make the right decision by spreading things in a coordinated fashion. So that's just one example of the work that happens all across the city. The depth of the Carp well, I'm happy to provide you what that information is, and certainly in thinking about the 2025 version of the well performance report, we'll probably have comments about those levels, or I can find out about that. Was there another question?
Well, just possibly,
What happened?
all those lots is running.
Okay, oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so we talked a lot about applications through the Planning Act, and one of the changes that the province made was they allowed developers to not have to do a site plan approval if they have 10 units or 10 and fewer. And so your sixplex, they don't have to go and make an application to add them, they just have to go for a permit.
If
a building. If they have the zoning, yeah, that's right. So this is a new frontier for the engineering, because we do our checks at site plan. And so the requirement for the detailed check at building permit is not there today. There is spare capacity in a lot of places in the city, but the fact is, when a lot of those communities were developed, we never thought more houses would come. That was the houses that were going to be there. This idea of doubling and tripling up, again, I guess I mentioned this idea of you're asking the plants to do more than they were designed to do, and this is a perfect example. And so, as part of our infrastructure master plan, that was approved in 2024, because the official plan says we want intensification. This is a way to not have as much growth, expansion of the urban boundary. We said, gee, we need a new way to figure out about the capacity. And so we are developing a program called Infrastructure Capacity Management Plan Program. I did something like that, ICMP, which is going to give us more information about all of our pipes and going to allow us in our business process to say, even if you show up at the building counter and ask for your 6th unit, we will have the ability to do the check. Not only to make sure that those 6 units have their service, but to make sure that there isn't an impact on everyone else who is already there. And so there would be the ability at the permit counter to say, no, you can't, there isn't enough capacity. And it would be a detriment or a risk of flooding or loss of fire protection, et cetera, for the existing community. So the new zoning bylaw actually includes a clause that will be approved hopefully by council in December that adds that requirement. You come and get your building permit, we're going to look at all of your servicing as if it were a site plan to make sure that that risk is eliminated. So the changes that happen from the province and to an official plan are resulting changes in our regular process to try and make sure that it's not a compromise to the level of protection for existing communities, but also the level of service that the new houses have. They should have the same level of service as everyone else expects of his work.
Last question on water to the gentleman in the back, and we are definitely going to.
I've lived in other communities here in Ottawa, and I did notice when I moved here that the water was not of the same quality, I'll call it, and it was harder. And you mentioned that here. So I'm just kind of curious what my expectation should be now that I live in this part of Ottawa. Should I have the same quality of water as I had in Canada or Stittsville where I lived previously? I know some of my neighbors have bought water softeners. Do I have to buy water softener in this part of the city and somebody else doesn't have to buy one? How does that work?
Yes.
Just like that.
That's simple.
Yes.
And I pay the same amount for my water as everybody else does.
Yes.
How does that work?
Just like that.
Okay.
So that is the one aspect that sometimes keeps me up at night when it comes to the residents of Carp annual water rate. So you do pay the same water rate as you did in Canada, and you still have to buy a water softener. So that's the reality of the situation. I don't know if costs are less for the city as a result of it being a communal well system. In fact, it could be even higher. So, and I think one one thing that I will note, and that I meant to note earlier, and Sue might know the number, what's the total number of communal well systems in Ottawa? 6. Out of the 6 communal well systems in Ottawa, Carp by far has the best water out of all of those rural villages. So although it's not as nice as you had in Canada and you can pay the same water rate, other rural village residents are paying the same water rate and get water that's not nearly as quality as the water that comes out of your tap. So
There's no plant that kind of treated and soften it?
And on that positive note, we'll switch over to our accents. We'll go to Roddy and Happy Russo.
That's nice.
A bit of a change. Normally traffic is the hot topic, so a bit of a change for us tonight. My name is Roddy Carter. I'm a traffic assessment specialist with Public Works. I'm one of 5 in the city, and my area is actually the opposite end of the city, so I am east end. I am here covering for my colleague Blue, who's on 5 weeks vacation. The council's office asked us to just briefly talk about a couple of, topics. So in my role, I'm responsible for essentially all pavement markings and signage. So that can be curbside regulations, stop signs, warning signs, and then we also do some other stuff, sight lines, other traffic-related items. So the first thing I was going to talk about is parking regulations. So parking is regulated in the City of Ottawa by the Traffic and Parking Bylaw, which was approved in 2017. In that bylaw, there are many different clauses that speak to when we put up no stopping signs, no parking signs. There's also a long list of unsigned regulations. So most people know you can't park in front of a fire hydrant. There's a small list of some of the other unsigned provisions that people may not be aware of. So in the City of Ottawa, you can park for a maximum of 3 hours, Monday to Friday, 7 to 7. Weekends, 6 hours, 7 to 7, and on staff holidays. There's no parking within 9 meters of an intersection, and the biggest one we've done in this area, in the urban areas for sure, is no parking within 1.5 meters of a driveway. All these provisions are enforced by bylaw services on a request basis. So we call 311, lodge an inquiry, and they will assign an officer to come out and look and take it if needed.
So, just quick question, the previous slide, it says that no parking portion of a highway. Can you define what is a highway? Is it 100 kilometers an hour, 70 kilometers, 80 kilometers?
So any public roadway is considered a highway. So regardless of road class, it is a highway in the Highway Traffic Act. The next one is we often get asked, well, I want no parking on the street. So in 2017, council also approved the on-street parking regulation change policy. This allows, it provides guidance to staff, or I guess rules to staff on when we can and cannot implement curbside regulations. So if it's safety related, we generally have the authority to go ahead and make any changes that we need to make. We often don't have that safety justification, so it becomes a community request, which is petition based. So the criteria for petition, you must live on the street that you're requesting petition for. No one wants me around your house charging and sign a petition, now you have to live with no parking in front of your house. So the request becomes the champion. So the city will draft the petition, list all the houses that are subject to the petition. The champion goes around, collects signatures. It's 1 vote per property. If you can't get a vote, it counts as a no vote. In order to be successful, at least 2/3 support, and the ward councillor has to concur with change. And then once the petition has passed and signed to go in, 3-year hold is put in place on any further changes, because we don't want petitions every week going back and forth, and our crews out there changing signs all the time. Next slide. So the other one that I guess brought up tonight was always stop control. So we get requests for always stop control pretty frequently. A lot of times it's for speeding or kids needing to cross the roads. So the city does have policies in place for when we can do always stop control, and they're largely based on provincial best practices and recommendations. So here's a list of reasons why we would not install always stop control. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the key ones are: it is not a traffic control device. Putting in unwarranted always stop control can lead to higher speeds, very low stop compliance, which then has its own safety issues with that. Next slide. So these are the warrant criteria that we follow. So in a built-up area, including a village where there's an expectation of pedestrians, we look at collisions. So there has to be at least 3 or more collisions per year over a 3-year period that could have been prevented. So turning collisions, angle collisions, rear end collisions don't count. Visibility, so we review sight lines, make sure that the approach sight lines are sufficient. And then we look at a weighted scoring. So it's a point system. We assign points for 5 different criteria. And the passing rate is 70%. Outside the built-up area, we still look at collisions and visibility. The traffic volume criteria is a bit different. So we look at total intersection volume, the minor street plus pedestrians crossing the major, and then the directional split, and all 3 have to be 100% met. So it's a lot harder outside the built-up area to warrant always stop control. Again, with unwarranted always stop control, compliance becomes an issue, and it's not day 1, it is year 5 and on, where people that drive it every day get accustomed to not having conflicting movements, or a police officer sat there doing enforcement. There are very few engineering measures available to correct that low stop compliance. We do rely on auto police to go out and do enforcement. We usually see a slight improvement for a few weeks, and then we get back into a low compliance period. So yeah, that was very brief, but happy to take any questions.
You talked about almost being a grow and March Road. Is there anything in the plan for that?
So I don't know. Again, I'm just covering. I can definitely take it away and look at what we've looked in the past.
Okay, so there is plans in the works for that intersection right now. Staff are coming up with multiple different designs for that intersection.
We're not going to put a circle in.
I don't know. So like I said, they're working on different options, but you will have the opportunity to criticize the roundabout option publicly in the next couple of months. There will be a public consultation on that intersection, and I did ask specifically that they come up with multiple options that the community can weigh and provide. So yes, there will be a change at that intersection. At this point, it's unknown exactly what the change will be, and again, we'll all have the opportunity to comment on that before a decision.
Who is it that looks after the speed signs?
Friends, not received.
So there was one in front of my house, was working fairly good, and all of a sudden a truck come along and took it down the road, 500 feet, and set it up there in front of the road sign, and that's how it sits. And I don't quite understand why that would have happened. Why would they take it away and run it up the road a piece to get it closer to the school? Is the only possible reason I can think of that they would do that.
So
they left us high and dry. They start to jam on the brakes when we buy the house, you know?
So it was all approved by Councillor Kelly, to be moved. Not to throw you under the bus, but It would have been moved for that reason, I'm assuming. I'm not aware of why it was moved. I will say I've been in this position for just over a month, so I'm not entirely sure what But, do you know the reasoning of why it was moved further down, school zone?
So Corey has just assured me that it was moved before my time.
Okay.
That's the block. Corey works in the Ward 5 office. And he does most of the traffic calming discussions.
So anyway, also, why was it moved?
I wouldn't be able to tell you, I'm not sure. I didn't work in the office before.
Eli's not here, so we can't ask him.
Thank God.
So I would say we'll look into it. I think that's the best option, why it was moved, and like we spoke about right before the meeting started. And then you have some concerns.
There's a sign with a turn in front of it along with it that blocks it for a good month of the way as it is.
I know we spoke about some concerns that are in your area, and I think we can look forward to working together in the 2026 season and seeing what we can also implement in the area and find out the reasoning on why we moved the speed board.
Which was me.
Yeah, but you have fun, huh?
I'm wondering if you can on this lane area right here. I think the following lane used to have no parking signs, and they were been able to work on it forever. And with the extra traffic, with the commons now, I know it's a traffic congestion area. Is there something to, or maybe parking up on side, or to make it easier for pedestrians?
Well, if there used to be no parking signs there and they've gone missing and that wasn't a policy or city of Ottawa decision that actively happened, perhaps there was a reason for them to come down and then went back up, but we can look into that specific area.
Were the ones on the sidewalk, that kind of T area coming down home?
It's like it's close, and it was on the close to the house.
I don't know if either of our traffic experts are able to address that question, but.
No, we'll look into it, like if it was there before, there'll be either, there should be a work order for the removal, if not, it's a maintenance.
Yeah, so usually like the maintenance, every year, every street in the city is driven to check for the signage. Snow plows do a lot of damage, people accidents knock them over, so we'll look into it, the history, and see if there was a reason. If not, we'll look to get them reinstated through maintenance. We'll put that in the report.
Okay. Just to see if you can see why the golf cart not that low, but I think that is
Peter.
Thanks. Your West End guys, they don't leave here.
Okay.
So we have a new neighborhood that's coming in, and I gotta admit, your first slide there gave me some positive feelings about things that are gonna happen with this new neighborhood. It's been approved and moving forward, and there's been a lot of concern in the neighborhood about the lack of potential parking, small driveways, multiple residents, expect to be more than one car per house. And then that will spill over onto either Langstaff or one of the associated roads that's relatively close by. So I see that by getting enough signatures, you can put parking regulations on. We discovered in Carp over a 4-day period every year that this neighborhood can't handle two sides of the street parking within the old part of Carp at all. And within the new parts of Carp, it's still relatively tight to have parking on both sides of the street. So is there a chance for people who live in Carp, who live on the streets, which we know will be affected by this new neighborhood, to ask for that kind of parking regulations put in place before it actually becomes an issue? Because we know it will be an issue. People will have to park off of that area because there will not be enough room. So can you take the bull by the horns and talk to your neighbors and say, we'd like to make parking on one side of this street, against rules at all. Because overnight parking will happen also, and I know that you don't know the neighborhood, so I won't, but the streets are not suited for two sides of the street parking.
So generally, we're reactive, so we want the problem to come out, and then we go to the solutions. So sometimes it is petition. The big thing with petition is that it shows consensus, right? It's not one resident wanting a change. It is the people that are directly impacted, that live on that road, that have a chance to vote. There are negatives about banning parking. So if you have guests over, that can be an issue. Speeding tends to increase when you have no street parking, even one side. Our best traffic calming measure is a parked car. So not so much in the rural area, than the suburb, we thought of flex gates, so signs in the middle of the road. Those, the intent is to narrow the width of the road and create friction, which slows cars down. That is, they're 30 centimeters wide, the parked car is 2 meters wide, right? So having parking has its benefits, so we do want the community to have that engagement and that voice in that decision. So we tend not to proactively go out and reduce parking unless there's an obvious safety issue. You know, there are provisions, like I didn't put it up, but any road that's less than 6 meters is no parking on sign. We don't put signs up for those. So, you know, traffic parking bylaw covers almost every possible scenario. So we'll look to apply that first. And if we can't, then we do the petition. And on petition too, there's options. It's not just no parking. You can do a 1 hour limit on your street. You can do a 2 hour limit on the street. So it's really then having the community decide what they want for their street and what works for them and their neighbors and themselves.
It sounds like the option.
Thinking again.
The first slide that showed like 1 hour, quite a bit of, I think you pretty quickly lived in there, and pretty quickly realized that somebody was parking blocking that whole way to the wrong call.
Yes.
I mean, it's fine to have all these rules, but I live on Park Road. There's a no parking sign in the front of the house beside me. There's a hydrant on the other side. I have a driveway. Nobody enforces any of the bylaws unless somebody complains.
It is.
And is that how it's supposed to be? So it's like to have all these bylaws, but, you know, they're not enforced.
So outside the core, so outside of our market area or business districts, it is reactive, so residents calling in and putting in a request for enforcement. In the core, they do have patrols, key patrols for bylaw services, but Carp, Island Orleans, it is all reactive. So you can call somebody in, you know, if it's your neighbor that continually parks in no parking zones, they get a couple of tickets, still get the idea that go find somewhere else to park. One thing about banning parking too is that it doesn't eliminate the issue, it moves the issue somewhere else. So we often get a petition, comes through that's successful, and then we find in the adjacent streets, they'll come and ask for the same thing because, you know, that street got it and all those cars are parked on my street and I don't like that. So there is a bit of a balance of allowing parking where we can and then, you know, prohibiting it where it makes sense or restricting it by, you know, one of the better ones is the time of duration. So a 1 hour, 2 hour duration allows somebody to visit a friend, but they can't be there all day long. But it is by law enforced on a reactive basis, so you have to make the call.
I will just add into that, so there's one area of West Carleton where there is proactive enforcement sometimes, that is Constant Day. So like weekend days of the summer, there is a bylaw officer in Constant Day during business hours. That is because of the absolute insanity that ensues in Constance Bay during summer days, and we are working on solutions to limit the traffic. with Councillor Kelly. If there are, and I'm thinking that there are times in Carp where there's an increased population, Saturdays, farmers market, and various events, so perhaps there's at least I could explore the idea of potential proactive enforcement in the Village of Carp during certain times, and we can come up with a reasonable ask to the city on that, and we can do it in the day, and maybe there's a reason that they would do it in Carp as well. We can, I know.
Well, it ends up being dangerous, and there are accidents right in front of my house because I'm at the top of the hill on Park Road. It's supposed to be 1.5 meters beyond, no, Park, right? So, you know, you can't see what's coming up the hill. There's a blind spot, and, you know, it's, when people park in front of that hydrant, I get to see anybody have a ticket, park in front of a hydrant downtown.
No arguments there. I would encourage you to report those incidences, and I will have that conversation with Lila on potential times that there may be an opportunity to provide that as well.
Is there anything in the parking regulations where you would put out to people with driver's licenses if an ambulance or a fire truck can't get up or down that street, you will be ticketed or towed, or, you know, why can't they have common sense? They go to park their car and they see that there's no room. You know, they're just assuming nothing's gonna happen on that street that night.
Well, I mean, you have no idea how awesome I think it would be if we could enforce common sense. That'd be amazing, but I will pass it over to.
So we do work with our colleagues in emergency services, so, and with roads, and so, if they encounter areas that there are an issue, we'll work with them and come up with some solutions, whether it's, you know, different levels of signage. You know, roads is a great example. We'll often do seasonal restrictions, so they'll say this road is too narrow, we can't get through their plows, so we'll put out signs that prohibit parking from December 1st to March 30th.
Yeah.
And that allows them easier access to clearing. There are different levels of parking regulations, so no parking allows for some parking. It's not, so someone with an accessible parking permit can park. For example, somebody loading can park and no parking zone. The next level up is no stopping, which is an absolute prohibition on stopping in that area. We generally start with no parking, and if we need to, we'll move up into the more restrictive. Part of that is there is some guidance on accessibility and people that need to park in no parking zone to access a clinic, for example. So there's certain rights that we gotta be aware of.
But for instance, if somebody did need an ambulance, or if I was walking up the street and I saw that there wasn't enough room for an ambulance or a fire truck, could I call the city and say these vehicles need to be removed?
Yeah, you can call. There are provisions about
Just in case?
Yeah, not impeding the highway. There's some provisions that can be applied in those circumstances, but yes, call 311.
There doesn't have to be a call to an ambulance or a fire truck for you to do that. You can just see the potential.
Correct.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Are there any parking restrictions around school zones? Is there a limit to, you know, how far from a school there is supposed to be enough room in a rural area?
No, so there's each school is individual, and we look at them individually. I will say schools are a nightmare for us. It's chaotic. It's, you know, parents get kind of tunnel vision of when you drop my kid off and get to work. We put out signs, they disobey the signs. So yeah, every school is different. There's no set criteria, distances or anything like that. We do different programs in the city. We encourage, they call it walk a block. So the idea that you don't drive your kid to the school, you drive them near to the school and they walk the last little bit in.
That's one of the challenges though, when they do put this walker block, if you live the block and a half away, then we're into the same situation where we've got cars parked on both sides of the road, all through Langstaff, Francis Colbert, Kavanaugh, and then we're still dealing with the fire truck can't get through and an ambulance can't get through. Happening every morning, at the beginning of school, at the end of school, and every parent event that happens at night.
So we can definitely look at the particular school like of concern. We can definitely look at that and see if there's any changes we can make to, encourage better
One
behavior.
side of the restriction or?
Yeah, again, around schools, we will do time of day, day of week, and seasonal restrictions. Because when school's not in session, if you live nearby, you should be entitled or able to park there. So we do look at those as options too.
More parking or traffic questions, concerns, queries? Okay, I do have an idea of where I want to go next. We do have 25 more minutes. There are two people up here who haven't been asked a question or said anything tonight. I feel really bad about that, so I'm sorry, Marie and Ian. But is there anyone from the Carp Village BIA here tonight?
What?
Carp Village BIA, anyone? No? Okay. Well, given how many businesses are in the village, I think that there would be representation from the BIA here tonight. And so I asked Ian Scott, who's an economic development officer at the city of Bolivar, and is doing a review of the rural economic development plan. So, does anyone have any questions for Ian? I don't know, Roddy, if you wanted to chat with Ian or no?
Over top.
Yeah, sounds good. Going once, going twice, three. Yeah. Alan?
So, yeah, we put up conflicts, we did have very good, and for various reasons, sadly, for 30 years, we was only
The only thing I can think of in terms of grocery stores is that they have their formulas for what the threshold is for the market size for them to have it. But in smaller villages, although it's not ideal, if you have a bakery, if you have a butcher, if you have a greengrocer, they can often make the case for themselves to operate, and you as a customer, you're probably paying a higher price if you're going to a baker and you're going to a butcher and you're going to a greengrocer than if you went to Food Basics and bought everything there. But it also adds to that village character that I've heard so many people talk about here tonight. That village character is not just where you live, but it's where you shop, it's how you interact with the business community. And so having some of those things, and even they develop to become draws. So I know there's a general store in Manotick Station, and people come from very far to shop at that general store. That's the kind of thing that can be a draw in the communities. So if there's somebody who wants to start a butcher shop or a general store or something like that, then that's something that we can help with. How do we make that a tourist draw? How do we make that a viable business, a good business, a growing? And that's the kind of thing that we'd like to see. We can help the entrepreneur who wants to start it. Getting the entrepreneur is hard. Yes.
Yeah, I know you're talking about the new Carson development, right there with the corner of the village. And one of the things I liked about the design was that they were talking about retail on the bottom left. And then have an apartment, like 2 or 3 stories, 2-story or 3-story, so that you have an apartment above. And I think Mr. Bernard made the comment, that's very European. And I think it's that kind of thoughtful design approach within sort of the business district of Carp that actually could bring in those types of stores that would actually complete what Carp would have to offer. Because we do have a bakery, right, but we don't have a butcher, we don't have a greengrocer or things like that, but they could be some of these small specialty stores. And I think if we can design some of these new developments such that they are encouraging people to be downtown, such that there is small retail, like Belmont happens, or something like that, that would really help retain the village character. So that's one of the reasons I like to have that concept on development.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The street level activation is important because if you require it or if you incentivize it, and that's the way I think it's being done now, mostly in the infill areas of the city, but they don't want there to be miles of nothing on the street, just residential. So having commercial as part, or incentivizing having commercial as part of it, makes for a better community.
I also think the Carson's plan is a perfect one.
As long as it does the pathway along the river, the big chunk change for him.
He's about 3 feet behind.
Maybe we can name the Carson when you're
There we go. All right. Does anyone have any further questions, comments? No, I love that you came.
I'm worried about the negative values of what we have now. We build houses that are going to last many, many years. But the ones that are going up, like the ones in Stittsville, after 3 years, and I'm not a builder, but I only build one, okay? But the thing is, I walked into the house, my friend, and 3 years into it, the tiles on the roof are turning up. And not only that, the paint on her front veranda and all is all peeling. And I'm like, is this house really old? Like, was it here before? And she said, no, it's only 2 years. And I'm like, okay. But I didn't want to say anything, but that shouldn't be. And if they're going to build that type of house here, and it's going to look like crap in 3 years, what's that going to do to the rest of our homes as far as value concerns?
I often get questions about home value, all kinds of things.
Is the city taking any repercussions for this? I mean, they hired the people that built these homes that use the cheapest products. And if you use cheap products, that's what you're going to get.
I can say that the city only hires people to build homes that the city builds, which would be Ottawa Public Housing.
Then how come they're across from Best, they're building an apartment there that has a wooden porch that's 3 feet, 3 stories high, say. Now, would you go out on a wooden porch after a couple of years? It's that high? No.
Yes.
But is that in the building code now?
Yeah, and building code is provincial, it's enforced by the city, so even when it comes to building codes, there's nothing we can do but enforce it.
So the city will see that these houses are built to perfection so that there's not falling apart.
Well, the city enforces the provincial building code, so, yes.
They also forgot to put the gas in one of the units and
And comment on that. Okay, so if there's no more questions or comments, yes, one more. Well, actually, we're going till 8:30 if people want to go to 8:30, so that's what we committed to.
Have no one else to add. In some municipalities, like HOAs, there's some sort of regulation to ensure the diversity of businesses in the town. No, we don't have that. So landlords could just put whatever they want.
If it's legal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, of course, there are regulations around all kinds of different businesses, like LCBO.
There's businesses that we need, and there's businesses that we don't need. I'll just put it that way. And there's no oversight.
It's not more of a market decision than a city decision, to be quite honest. If someone wants to set up a business and they are successful, then that is their business and they are successful.
Wouldn't that be a bit of the BIA's,
Well, I mean, certainly it's a discussion we could have with the BIA, but there's no authority to say you cannot operate here unless it's an illegal business.
but you might market for the types of businesses we need. And, you know, to say to the person that wants to move in, that they can just say, well, we already have an village now. You're not gonna do that good.
Well, and that would work if the city was the landlord marketing the opportunity. Otherwise, it's a private owner offering space to a potential business owner who has an initiative that they would like to see happen. And it fits within the zoning and all of the regulations. There's not much to do.
It would fall under the category of a market regulation. I mean, I guess it's like it doesn't get involved in that.
Yeah, we can't say you can exist here and you cannot, if both fall under the zone. All right, I do have some follow-ups here. There's hard copies of the secondary plan, which is 2,800 copies on a table back there. Please help stack the chairs before you leave. And Roddy, I have a couple of sheets that shows you the difference between the property taxes for within and outside. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.